David Smith, welcome to the Graph Podcast. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here. I joked at the start when we met that I've hounded you for probably 12, 18 months to try and get you to sit across from me, and I'm so pleased that you've taken the time. Thank you for being here.
No, thank you. I'm very humbled, and I think that, last year was a bit of a confusing year for me because I had 3 brain tumours growing. So people keep saying to me these things, and I'm like, did we?
Yeah.
I can't remember having those conversations.
Well, I've had other people put me off,
Okay.
David, but not with such perhaps significant reasons for that. But
but you were a good company when I was in hospital.
yeah, absolutely.
It was good messaging.
David, when I thought about having you on the show today, Graft, as I mentioned to you before, is about the hard work that goes into. It used to be about professions, but I think it's more kind of develops now into where everybody gets in life as they travel through different things that cause them the need to hard work or focus and so on and so forth. And when I look at your story and what really intrigued me most about it, it's kind of got, for me anyway, 2 chapters. And the first bit that I just wanted to touch on is that you're a gold medalist Paralympian. We'll start in the very early days, though, if we can, very briefly. A bit about your background. Where did you grow up, and how did you become involved in sport?
Yeah, I think, first of all, it's quite interesting because I think that it's been such a spiritual awakening journey that I think my ego went on an ego adventure for the first 30 years of my life. And I think, if you look at how the brain shapes itself in early development from 0 to 7, we get that first values and programs from our parents and from our school teachers and the people we're surrounded by. And then from maybe 7 to 14, we start to form a basis of social identity and where we fit in with our different groups. And then from 14 to 19, we sort of solidify that identity. And then the prefrontal cortex matures at sort of our late 20s. And then we go into our 30s as human doings rather than human beings. And we've been almost running around with this persona and ego on and attached our identity to the ego. So if someone had said, who was David Smith? I'd have said, well, he's an athlete, which is kind of ludicrous because that's like saying if you have a BMW that you're a BMW. No, you have a BMW.
Yeah.
And it's how people attach themselves to the inner narrative that's going on with the inner voice rather than having awareness. So for my whole life, I was attached to this identity of being this sports person. And it's what sport was for me. It wasn't a mechanism to try and go and compete on a national team or win anything. It was a sense of freedom and movement and a coping strategy for high stress environments. But I also grew up in a little village in Scotland where everyone just did sport. So from 0 to 7, my exposure and my environment was just about outside running, playing a sport.
Quite competitive.
Yeah, playing a sport called shinty, which was very competitive, but it wasn't an individual sport. It was a team sport. So it was all about the we, not the I. And of course, you're learning all of these first principles and values, which will then carry you through the rest of your life. And I always had a philosophy that I think that sport gave me the mindset and the physiology to deal with cancer and paralysis. But cancer and paralysis really taught me how to live and taught me how to explore how to live later in life. So I think we all have to go on this sort of ego adventure where we're learning about who we are, where we fit in the world. And no one teaches you this at school. There's no professor coming in and actually teaching you about what's going on with your thoughts, feelings, and emotions. You're just trying to work it out at an age where you don't have a fully developed logical brain. So it's pretty complex, but I was very lucky that I grew up in sports. So I was given the values of discipline, teamwork, persistence, grit, all these values that have served me extremely well through life. And yes, for the first 30 years of my life, I became attached to this whole identity of being on the national team, trying to win and going to an Olympics. And that was like, well, if I don't do that, then the whole life is just a failure. And unfortunately, the narrative that's sometimes fed into professional sport is, if you don't win and you don't make it, you're a failure. And that runs through a lot of the professional sports bodies. And you have athletes who retire and they're sometimes very broken individuals, which is a real shame because I don't think it has to be like that if we develop the human first and then the athlete, but the focus is on developing the athlete and not the human.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that you make there, David, about the athletes, because that does happen quite commonly, right? Where they're out of it, they're lost because they've attached too much of it as a persona, not so much, but this is all they are.
Yeah, to the ego. Then if you think of how thoughts, feelings, emotions, and then your behavior and your personality, then you attach to the ego of what you do. This is who I am, and this is all I am, and you don't really understand the principles and the values because no one's really discussed that with you. So you think, well, I'm only good at this, and my sort of self confirmation that I am good is if I win this, and if I win this, then I've achieved everything. But then you're left with the voice after it all going, well, this is it. Is this it? Well, what now? Who am I? And then in the real bigger scheme, and I don't mean this in a horrible way, but no one really cares, right? Like, at the end of the day, like when I leave hospital, sometimes I go and walk through a cemetery to remind me that it's a beautiful gift to be alive, but we will all die, and we're all going to die at different stages. Some people make it to their hundreds, to the 90s, some people don't even make it out of their teens. But life is just constantly moving all of the time. And because we're in such a human doing rather than a human being world, it's very hard to slow down. It's very hard to be present. And we're constantly getting pulled. And then because no one's really done a full sort of 101 philosophical, psychological deep dive into how your mind and body and how you perceive the world, that people are running around purely attached to their identity. They're running on a subconscious mind that's telling them that they are their thoughts. And people don't really understand that you're not your thoughts. That's just a thought, and that's not who you are. But they attach that to what they do. If I'm a lawyer, a doctor, a sportsman, an athlete, then you lose that. And then when you lose it, that's when there's real trouble. So when you come to the end of your retirement of a sportsman, and you wake up and you go, well, what am I now? And that's where you can have that sort of, I guess, that existential crash. And I seen it when I was paralyzed from the neck down, because I had identified with just being this strong person who just moved through all these sports my whole life.
Yeah.
Nothing was an issue. And all of a sudden now I'm paralyzed, lying in a spinal cord hospital, and people are asking me, who are you? Well, you're not a sportsman in a spinal cord hospital. You're given a diagnosis. I was a C4 incomplete tetraplegic Asia D. So that's what I was. Catchy, right? But people want to know what you are.
Yeah.
So it's like almost being in prison. Well, what are you in for?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden people are rolling around in their wheelchairs. They're like, what are you? Incomplete or complete? Are you Asia A, B, C, or D?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's like, maybe we're trying to find our tribalism in our group, or there's a whole host of things going on at that point. And I was like, wow, this is my new identity. And then again, if you attach to that identity, you're only going to, it's a slippery slope.
Yeah. Just to frame that for some of the people of the interesting that you use the word different disciplines of sport, because it's quite miraculous, right? So into karate and into the British squad for karate.
Yeah.
Went into sprinting, 400 meters, 200 meters, which then caused fractures in your feet that then had to be operated. Went into the bobsleigh, Team GB for the bobsleigh. And then in 2012, won Olympic gold, Paralympics in the 2012 for rowing.
Yeah.
And my understanding is awarded MBE for services to rowing at 2013.
Yeah.
That just kind of journey of different sports that you've gone into, for me, shows that there's kind of, well, if one thing stopped me, I've moved to the next and then moved to the next. Is that how it felt when you moved from one to the other?
I think it's probably my values of curiosity. I'm a curious person. I like adventure, and I think if I was just to go into one sport for 25 years, I might have become a bit mentally numb. And where it reinforced to me was after I had brain surgery, I was in between two worlds. So I thought I was in between life and death. Now that might have been the anesthetic. It might have been that the fact that they'd cut me all the way through here, pulled my forehead off, and removed a tumor the size of an orange. So that could have been that, or I could have been spiritually in a different place with a higher power. I'm still trying to fathom out what that was. But for 3 weeks post-brain surgery, I was stuck in the default mode networks. I couldn't focus. I couldn't concentrate on anything. My life was playing back to me in high speed, like I was sat in the front row of a cinema just watching the screen. And my whole life just played back to me from the very first memory I had as a kid all the way up until the day I was rushed into emergency brain surgery. Not one medal, not one national team, nothing material. Wow. The only thing that came up was experiences with friends. And that told me so much about how I'd lived, that I was blessed to have lived a life mostly based on my first principles of relationships, growing up in the little village, being part of the team, but there was nothing about, oh, this medal or any of that stuff. I think that's where there's such a slippery slope with the ego and all of this identity and who I am, and I'm only going to be valued if I've got 10 Olympic medals, or whatever the crazy story is that as athletes get sucked into. None of that played back in my life. And that's for me. For other people, it might be different. They might, that might be their sole joy. But for me, it wasn't that. It was all about relationships, about human connections, about going skiing in deep powder snow in the back of Scotland with my best friend. All of these things were playing back to me. And what it did is it gave me a sense of calm, that I was ready to die. I wasn't giving up, but I thought, okay, if I don't make it out of this hospital now, and this was only last October, so it's not that long ago, if I don't make it out of this hospital now, I'm okay. I've lived, I didn't chase on the rat race, as Bob Marley would say, get out the rat race. I didn't chase the rat race. I didn't chase money. I didn't chase material things. I just kind of wanted to live and have a content life, not a happy life, because I think happiness is an emotion. It comes with sadness, anger, frustration. It just comes in. But I wanted to live a content life that I'm happy with what I've got. I don't need any more. And it always reminds me of Michelangelo sculpting David. He didn't add to the sculpture. He cut away. So I think some people, especially in self-improvement, I think everyone's like, well, I need to add stuff. I need to get a new car to be happy. I need to get this. I need to get that. Actually, if I get to the medal and win the gold medal, I'm going to be happy. That's going to be the answer to everything. I know so many athletes that have won gold medals and then just went off the tracks because it didn't answer all of the problems. And I think that's the thing. And when you're being run by that unconscious program and you don't have the level of awareness of what actually is going to give you contentment, then you're kind of just roaming around on someone else's program.
Wow.
And post-brain surgery reinforced that to me, that, okay, I did all those sports. The best thing that I left from all of those sports was not that I could sit and say, well, I got this and I got that. It was more like, I remember having a really good laugh when we were in Japan, or I remember getting beat up in a dojo in Japan, or I remember just waking up one morning and skiing fresh lines in Chile. And when I was recovering from my brain surgery, I had all these conversations with all of my friends from those journeys. And that's what we spoke about. We spoke about the times where we laughed and we smiled. And it goes back to that analogy of, people remember how you make them feel, not what you tell them.
Wow. I love the Michelangelo bit of chipping it away. I think that there's so much at the moment, isn't there, to, where people constantly, as you quite rightly say, oh, I need more.
Need more.
Yeah. The last 6 months, certainly for me, have my own business and this kind of strive to, well, if you just get here, then we'll be. And if we just, and then in the last kind of 3 months of reading the book I was telling you about at the start of this, well, actually, it's how you think about things. As I begin to think about stripping more things away, I feel more content. Yeah. I don't feel as panicked, or my thoughts don't make me feel as not panicked, but just anxious about an uncertainty where pulling away layers. And I'm working with a guy called Stephen Desborough, who's a performance coach. Great guy, worked with sportsmen, business people around, and he talks about this, the light bulb moment of, you're a light bulb with loads of layers of handkerchiefs on the top of it that we create ourselves, and then when we get to the top and it's piled, we're like, why is the light so dim? Whereas if we pull one off more and more things that you thought you needed, actually you begin to shine, so to speak, in that space. We as you moved into kind of some of the medical issues that you mentioned briefly there, David, when did you, following 2013, when did you first notice there was a problem, or because it was pretty soon after in that time frame, wasn't it?
My first issue started actually in 1999. I was running track and field, and I would do a training session, then I would drive home, and I was getting electric shocks in my legs, and just stuff wasn't really going right. And in those days, there was no ChatGPT, there was no Google, you would bring out this huge big medical book and try and read through it to be like, what's wrong with me? And I'd go to doctors, and they were just like, you're doing too much sport, or you're doing this, or you're doing that, and think, you're just pushing too hard. And then I think what my blessing was because I was so fit and strong, it masked a lot of the signs, and also it's a very slow growing tumor. many people that are diagnosed with brain tumors and stuff are running around for 10 years with the brain tumor and they don't even know. And then they go to get their eyes tested, and then there's a letter that arrives saying, hey, you better go and make a medical appointment because the optician has actually found the brain tumor. So some less so, some are fast, but some are also slow growing. So I'd gone through my whole 20s with like medical issues that I just pushed through. And it wasn't until I joined British Rowing in 2009 and I was training and everything was very heavily monitored. So we monitored our sleep before there was Whoop and Aura Rings and that. We were already doing that with our physiology team, with other machines. And they could see that there was lots of fragmentations in my sleep where I wasn't getting great sleep and I wasn't really training. And I was 6'4" and 105 kilo rower, and I wasn't really replicating what that should look like on the scores and training every day.
Performance point of view.
Performance point of view. So it was kind of all performance based, and then the performance based then would cross over into the medical base. So then it was like, well, we better send you for some scans, we better do all these tests. So they started doing all these tests on me to see what was wrong with me, and eventually it was like, well, let's just scan your neck because there's a chance you have a bulging disc, because in rowing you're constantly sitting down. There's a lot of pressure on the discs. And I just remember sitting in Windsor in 2010 and a doctor just saying to me, oh, this shaded area is a tumour. And at that point, I was still being very much run by this athlete mindset, ego, just push through.
Yeah.
And
Thanks for letting me know. I've got to get back to practice.
Yeah, basically, and almost a little bit of ignorance, which in fairness probably served me right at the time, because I think at that point I really had to work hard to get back into the boat, to get to World Championships, to get to London Games. So if I'd been maybe a bit too spiritual, that might not have come to fruition. So actually, I liken it to a boxer that every round has a strategy. And if you get to the 12th round, you're not boxing the same as you did in the first round.
Yeah.
And now I'm on to like the 16th round.
Yeah.
But in those early days, round one, I had the strength. I wasn't paralyzed. I just had to do the recovery. But I went into hospital 105 kilos and I left at 65 kilos.
In what time period?
In 3 weeks. So,
wow.
And then sport doesn't wait for you. There was still a World Championships to come. There was still a qualification to get to London. So then I had to go into full-time training. And I remember going very first time back to the British rowing base in Reading and being told, you need to do 18 kilometers on a rowing machine today. And I was only like a few months out of hospital, and I couldn't even feel my body. But I had that mindset and that resolve to just sit down and be able to detach from the outcome and just be like, right, every stroke's in the moment. And remember, we only ever have the eternal now.
Yeah.
Tomorrow never comes, because when tomorrow comes, it's actually the now. So I had that. I'd read Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, in hospital, and I realized that very early on, that we actually only have the moment that we're in, but our brains are constantly pulling us to the future or back to the past. But when we have that awareness, we can actually quieten down the inner voice to realize that, well, we only ever have this eternal moment. So when you said earlier on about thinking about, well, I need to get there, I need to do this.
Yeah.
You never actually get there.
No.
Because then you'll only just be in the eternal now. And it's quite nice when you're having to suffer for 18 kilometers on a row machine to know that
this is the
now. So I just pushed away. And then one thing led to World Championships. We won the World Championships, qualified for London, made it to London, won a gold medal in London, and then had 6 months of craziness, of all doing things that kind of just are not real. It's not the real world. And then after that all slowed down, I found myself back in Scotland where I really belonged, which was, for me, calm, serenity, peace. That stillness of nature is so important. It's one of my biggest passions, and I just found myself back there thinking, this is where I belong. I don't want to be doing all of the stuff in that's ego boosting, basically. I want to just go and ski some nice backcountry lines in the Scottish mountains. And
it's nice that you felt like that, though, right? I mean, because that's a trajectory for a lot of people. That great. Here's the high life now, right? This is what all that's been for.
Yeah.
This is the bit that I should be enjoying.
Yeah.
Nice that you're able to go back to actually.
And that's a slippery slope. I met lots of people. Some athletes become super famous out of one medal, and they go and do all these reality shows and do all these things, and it's everyone's entitled to their own thing, but I think that can be quite empty. And you don't really know who your friends are. I remember watching, I can't remember the DJ's name, but he unfortunately died. But he's at the end of his documentary on Netflix, he said, all the hangers on. Like,
yeah, I know who you mean.
You know who I
The
mean?
Swedish guy, isn't
Yeah,
it?
the Swedish guy,
Yeah.
He's like, all the hangers on. Who were my friends?
Yeah.
And I remember saying this to one young guy who'd won a couple of medals. I said, remember, your friends are friends with you because you are who you are, not what you've done.
Mm.
And you need to be very mindful.
Did you feel that you had people that was happening?
Yeah. Through after the back of London, all the time.
Yeah.
All these people like just hanging on and like, come here, come and do this, do all that. And they weren't bad people, but everyone wanted to hold a medal. Everyone wanted, and all of a sudden I was kind of like, wait a minute, what am I doing here? Like, I need to go home to Aviemore, where I've known people for 30 odd years. They're my friends because of who I am.
Yeah.
I remember when I went home after my first surgery, some guy tied my shoelaces together under the table in the local bar, because that's your friends.
Don't get up too high, mate. I'm bringing you back right now.
And that for me was super important. And I think that was the beauty of the little village there, that you're always grounded. And I like that. And I think if you start going on all these reality shows, you don't know who your friends are. It's all very superficial.
Yeah.
And I think it can be, again, if you've got your stuff together and you're very aware and you understand and you have an awareness of your psychology and philosophy, then I think you could probably navigate that and be okay.
Yeah.
But you see a lot of people and you're just like, wow. Like, I watched an interview the other day and it was with Jim Carrey, and this girl was interviewing him. And she was so lost. Like, she tried to interview him and make it all about icons and about wow. And what he came back with was so philosophically advanced that she didn't have a clue. And she was just like, and she was trying to mock him. But by trying to mock him, she actually kind of looked stupid.
Yeah.
And I felt for her because I thought, wow, you've been sucked into this thing that you think that the biggest goal in life is to get on the red carpet and be an icon and be a celebrity and have all of this like kudos. But actually Jim Carrey's telling you, who's achieved all of that, that's not what it's about.
He does this really. I've seen a speech with him actually that you mentioned, David, where he's at an awards and he's mockingly saying, I'm 2-time, and I mean, have you seen it with Jim Carrey? But when I go to sleep at night, I dream about being 3-time. And his point of what he talks about later with that is that what we were talking about. Yeah. You're chasing what you have now. Yeah. You're just chasing something that realistically.
Yeah. And I think it's to find that balance, right? Where it's not to say, I think the great minds are not telling you not to have a vision and not have a purpose and not, maybe not chase, but I think, if we start chasing things, then what are we chasing and why? Yeah. But I think if we reframe it and think, well, what's my principles? What's my values? What's my purpose? And I think purpose is super important because it has to be bigger than yourself. If it's purely just about you, then I think that's also pretty dangerous. I think if your purpose is greater than yourself and it's in the future, then it gives you meaning and something to get up every morning and to go after. But you're not chasing it. You're sort of saying, well, this is my passion, this is my purpose, and this is my vision for my life. This is how I want to live my life. This is who I want to show up every day. And like, I have my intention every day now is to make people smile. That's it. Every day I leave the house now, I'm like, I just want to make someone smile, have a nice conversation with somebody. And if they smile and laugh, I can go home. I don't have to write a gratitude journal. I don't have to debrief my whole day and be really super analytical. I can be like, hey, I actually made someone smile today. Yeah. And I have no idea what they're dealing with or what they're going through. But for one moment,
it wasn't that.
Yeah. We had a smile, we had a laugh. And I think that's where it's super important that we remember the beauty of play. Like, I think this balance of human being and human doing, everything's about work, got to work harder, got to work, got to do this, got to do that. Where actually, if we play, greatness can still be done. Yeah. But it can be fun, and life should be about enjoyment. It should generally be not, I don't have to wake up, dread Monday, go to work, oh my God, got to do all this. It's like this constant pressure, where if we can sort of reframe it into more of a play environment, we can still live the life we want to live, but smile and enjoy it as well. And I think I think the world's probably crying out for Bob Marley to come back and, and sing us some lyrics to this, just to remind us about what richness it really is.
Yeah. An old colleague of mine that I met a couple of weeks ago, interestingly, starting a new business. It's a passion. It's a health-based business, so it's passion. It's not about more. But we talked about how we worked in the same industry, and like the medals or the personal stamps that we gave ourselves, that we went to a conference, we stayed up till 5 a.m. We then got back up in the morning, and we, if you went to bed early, you're his words, you're a pussy. What are you doing? And it was like this badge of honor of grind yourself down sort of thing, without ever really. When I look back on that now, I don't reckon I enjoyed any of it.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Not to the point of you saying about like play, and I'm thinking about, I was thinking about some of the questions I wanted to ask you today, and you talk about one of the things you mentioned about when you're going through treatment of replaying things in your mind, and those beautiful, fresh lines in snow with your friends and your mate,
but
tiny laces.
Maybe that was your ego adventure.
Yeah,
sure.
So,
and then that gets you where you are now, because I think there's a lot of science about trauma and what trauma is, and I often think I had a GP ask me the other day, do you think you would have got to where you got to if you hadn't gone through all of the cancer? And I was like, well, I have no idea. I would love to have thought I would get to this without all of this.
Yeah.
But I maybe would just be an unconscious being roaming around in human doing mode if I hadn't had all of this. So this really sucks and I don't like it, but I've accepted it, and I've been like, well, what has it taught me? What's it learned? What am I learning from this journey? And I think it's to realize that the waves on the sea, it's an Alan Watts quote, the waves on the sea are not separate to the sea. They're part of the sea. But if you just see yourself as that individual wave and you're crushing around, where I like to go down under the sea, where it's a bit more calmer, and realize that life is not happening to me. Life is this dance with the music. And I said before we came on the show that if you go to the opera or a music concert, you don't go to get to the end, you go to be with the music and dance with the music. And I think that's such a beautiful way to see life, not as a journey to get to a destination, but this dance. And the music's playing. And if we don't like the music, we can turn the channel and play a different song, but also to realize that every beat of the music is not always great.
Yeah.
There'll be some beats that, I don't quite like that song's not so great, but I have to sit with that song at the moment, and what's it showing me, what am I aware of that song? So I think that we go on that ego adventure through all those early years of developing our social group, our tribalism groups, wherever we may sit, our beliefs, and then we challenge our thought processes, and then eventually we maybe get to somewhere in our 40s and that's why I love old people. I love sitting with old Rastas in Jamaica and just asking, hey man, what's your experiences in life? You've lived a whole life. And I think that's, that it's a beautiful moment to be able to spend time with older people and who have gone through stuff. And I think that's also very poignant when you're on a cancer ward, because you're with people who are having real life, serious. Like I was in therapy yesterday with my therapist, and my therapist said to me, she's like, most of the people that come in here are just dealing with noise. It's not really that it's not taking anything away from people saying that problems, anxiety are not bad, but it's stuff that genuinely doesn't matter if you're not facing your death. And it's amazing how life just changes. I've been 16 years now in cancer wards, neurological wards. I've met all sorts of different people. And nobody ever said to me they wish they'd spent more time at work and less time on the golf course. Everyone said, I wish I'd just had a bit more play in my life. And just made more time for my family, made more time to be present, made more time, not just chasing the monetary stuff or whatever it was they were chasing. They all said, I just wish I'd spent a bit more time in the moment.
Yeah. I listened to Dr. Rangan Chatterjee.
Yeah.
There's a lady who wrote a book about the 5 headlines of people who are dying. She worked in a palliative care for 8 years. And I mean, cliche, right? But none of them say, fuck, I wish I'd done that report.
I know, not exactly true, right?
But more that they do talk about this kind of, back in the playground.
Yeah.
Like what we said at the start, running across, fields, beaches, no shoes on.
Yeah.
But I also think within that, David, that that can be anywhere. It doesn't have to be this beach field and so on. It's just, but for me, more that realization of it's just right now.
Yeah.
It's as soon as you wander, I think that's where that
Yeah.
kind of intrepidation and so on comes
And I
from.
think that's like when they say Dr. Michael Gervais, a sports psychologist in America, I kind of use him as a little bit of a mentor. He always says you can train 3 things in life. You can train your craft, which is your technical skills for your work. You can train your body physiologically in the gym, running, moving, walking, and then you can train your mind. And what is training your mind? Is it for some people, it is maybe going to therapy like I did yesterday and sitting down and having a patient-centered conversation. And another time there's maybe where I just need to go and listen to some Alan Watts or some other podcast or a professor talk about psychology and just have a little bit of an existential thought. So what is it to train your mind? Mindfulness. So my therapist yesterday said, look, I think you'd actually benefit more from having a coach talk about mindfulness and talking about the things you're interested in than actually just coming and offloading and replaying the trauma to me every week. That I don't think, she goes, the way your mind is now and the lived experiences you've had, I think that maybe once every 6 months you can drop in and see me. But actually, so that was like super aware of her to be able to recognize that and say, actually, I think a coach would be really good for you, who could just come around and have a coffee with you and just have a conversation, which you can find some sort of meaning and belonging in it. And I think is super cool, because for me, it's like, okay, if I can create the right environment, then I can flourish in my life, and I don't have to get caught up into, well, what's next? I need to get to here. I need to get to there. And I think that for me, I think that's super important. And I just wish we would teach this in school, because if somebody would give you, if you've got to drive a car, you have to do all these driving lessons, all this test, and then you get your car. But we're running around with this machinery in between our ears that no one actually ever instructs us what's actually going on in there. And then you get a cancer diagnosis and you're flung into complete trauma and turmoil, and you're in this whole world where you're like constantly going to hospital, you're seeing people die, you're seeing all this pain and suffering, and you don't have a toolkit. Where every other job in the world, you have to go to university, you have to do your courses, you have to do all of these things to get prepared to go to work. But actually to live in society with other human beings who are all trying to navigate all of this stuff, we're all running around really with no real sort of knowledge or wisdom or insight into what's actually going on between our ears. And I just thought to myself, wow, imagine if we all had a level of mindfulness from primary school all the way through high school. So where we had that emotional regulation, that awareness, and then we entered into society, it would be I would like to think it would be a higher functioning human being that we would be exposed to daily.
That's your podcast right there, David. That's where you're going to have to start, right? I'm listener number 1 without question. I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
David, one of the things that's kind of come out of the Graph podcast is some of the topics that we've covered have helped people. It's been great to be able to get some comments from certain people about listen to this, whether it's a lady that we had on with triple negative breast cancer, a lady whose husband was killed and how she dealt with it and so on. I just want to touch on your how you've dealt with cancer treatments and what you could possibly share with somebody who may be finding out about it today or unfortunately, sadly, we all know somebody. What's kind of your headlines of having gone through a lot of treatment for it? What do you say to those people of, well, think about this?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I've navigated it for so many years now. And I've tried to understand when people say things to me, how it makes me feel. And it goes back to that again, how does somebody make you feel, not what they tell you to do? And then I realized that people don't want to be told what to do. They want to be listened to ultimately. And I think that I look around, I call them sometimes the cancer police. And they're the people who come to me, oh, you need to do more vitamin C, you need to take more of this, you need to do this. And then what that does is it puts a guilt on me or the patient that I am not enough. I am not doing enough. Then the ego gets playing in, and then that inner narrative comes as like, oh, I'm not enough. So you're saying to me, because I didn't take 100 grams of IV vitamin C, that's the reason I have cancer. Because some cancer police somewhere has said that. And so all of a sudden then I'm like, wow, I'm not enough. I'm not doing enough. And then that puts you into a real place of guilt and shame, whereas a place you actually really need compassion and love and care. So I think that it's individual to every person. There is no coping strategy when you sit in front of a doctor and they tell you, hey, you've got brain cancer. Like, how do you deal with that? And I think it's on the physician's hands at that point. That the doctor, if they're coming at it with a lot of psychological mileage, they can sit and just give the person a couple of minutes. Just let them just go rabbit on. Don't hit them with studies and, well, this tumor shows that you're going to have 6 months left to live and blah. All that stuff is too much at that point. It's too much. There's a great brain surgeon, Dr. Ranal Chundy, that talks a lot about this. He says this beautiful quote where he says, I've shaken 10,000 hands, I've opened 3,000 skulls. None of those people are alive anymore. But so he's come at it from a lot of those conversations, delivering those news. And when I get told that from an oncologist, I sit and I'm like, wow, how was it for them to deliver that news?
Yeah.
They're delivering that news every day to people. And I'm thinking, wow, and they're only human beings as well. So then I go out and I sit in the oncology waiting room and I look around and people are dealing with it differently. People are on their phones, people are smiling, some people are just looking into the abyss, some people are meditating. I try to look and get contact and smile with people and say, hey, how are you? And there is no, like, I would never tell anyone to do anything. The one thing that I've learned is to have a good network of people, have people who will listen to you. That if you just need to offload, and they just listen, and that might be a stranger, it might be a therapist, and for the people who are not dealing with it, maybe it's good to do some thought about, well, how would you speak to somebody? Don't tell them just be positive, because that leads into toxic positivity. And then it's almost saying to them, if you say to someone who's dying of cancer, just be positive, stay positive. What you're telling me is not okay that I have a negative thought. So then when I have a negative thought, I'm thinking, oh my God, everyone's telling me to be positive. Just be positive, because positivity is going to cure it, which is crazy. You need to allow people to have their emotions. It's a really horrible situation to be in. So just hold space for them. And that's the difference between having sympathy, toxic positivity over empathy and compassion. And compassion is just to sit with someone. Like, I don't know what it's like to have what you have, but I can sit with you and just, you tell me what you need. If you want me just to, one of my friends phoned me up post-brain surgery, and his first question, what's the plan? What's the plan? And I was like, well, I understand your curiosity and I understand that you care, which is great, but I've got 4 oncologists that are talking to me about the plan. I don't want to talk to you about the plan. I want to talk to you about all the laughs we had growing up, and I want you to treat me like David that you've always known, not David the cancer patient. Don't define me by the cancer. Don't change your behaviors to me because this has happened to me. It sucks. Great. If I bring it up, then just listen. But if I don't bring it up, what's the plan? And I understand people are they're just wanting to help.
The national navigation for everything, isn't it? I'm just listening to what you're, the guy that I'm working with, as I mentioned, it's you talk about relationships with people in family. The immediacy as a father is, I got to fix it.
Got to fix it.
David's got cancer. Well, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And actually that bit that you're talking about. Well, one, you can't, and two, that I find myself now more and more when people are talking about things in general or anything, it's just, I don't say anything. Just kind of the listening element is so, and when you then offload anything yourself, myself, and someone just listens, it's so helpful.
It's beautiful, right?
Yeah.
It's why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Because we were meant to listen, and I think a lot of times people don't listen. They hear to reply rather than listening to understand. And I've had to teach myself that as well over the years, because I can remember back to the David who, when I first started studying psychology and everything, I was like, I need to tell everyone this. I need to tell everyone. I've got the answer. And then I realized is that, I don't actually know anything. And actually everyone's on their own little dance with life. And maybe I read something or learn something in a moment where I can be like, actually, you know what, that really helped me. And if I'm really listening and connected to you, and I feel that that's the point where I can share that, then I can share it. And that's where I I really love listening to Alan Watts right now. And we were speaking before the show, but I'm not going to regurgitate all his stuff. If I meet someone in an Uber, I might just say, hey, like, listen to this.
Yeah.
This is cool. And then they might listen to it, they might not listen to it. And if I said to a friend yesterday, I was on the phone, I asked him if he'd ever heard of him, and he's like, no. And I said, well, I'll send you a 10-minute video. If you have 10 minutes free over the next couple of weeks, give it a listen. He might listen to it and go, I don't like that. Or he might listen to it and go, oh, wow, that's super interesting. So I think, yeah, if somebody's going, and there will be, 1 in 2 people are diagnosed with cancer now, it's rife, and it's, you know, and I see them all. Every week I go to oncology, I see it, and I'm just like, you know, be kind. Like, there's a psychiatrist at Harvard called Susan David. She wrote a book called Emotional Agility, and she said if you can leave the house every day with kindness, curiosity, and courage, that's a beautiful 3 values to have. And then you can hold that with people. Where if you leave in a human doing, chasing mode, then you're just bulldozing through everybody, and it's just, yeah, and I struggle with that. I think, well, who am I showing up as today? And if I can just slow down a little bit and be more kind, be more curious, have the courage to sit with people, and like you say, just that listening, it's a beautiful moment to have with somebody, and then you can learn a little bit more about them, and you can build that relationship where you can say, well, actually, you know, maybe we just have a cup of coffee in the morning and watch the birds. Like, I sat this morning having my coffee and I watched 2 birds land on an olive tree, and it was the best gift. It was amazing. And yet, if I ask somebody, can you describe your day to me, they'll probably be like, well, I woke up, had coffee, read the newspaper, did this, did that. It's very linear. And I said to you, but could you really explain the day? And you can't, because it's so magical. It's impossible to explain the day. And because there's so much beauty going on, but people don't notice the beauty because they're in this trapped linear, well, I got to get to work. Then when I get to work, I got to do the emails. Well, actually, when I wake up in the morning now, the first thing I do is I'm going to turn on my phone and do emails. So, like, I think that's just such a waste of a beautiful life, that the first thing you do in the morning is wake up and attach to a device to answer emails to somebody else's email, to another meeting about a meeting about a meeting, and you miss the beauty of making your coffee. So I always say to people, when you make your coffee in the morning, think about the bean to the cup. I have a little poster in my kitchen that says bean to cup, because it shows about interconnectedness. And I guess that Buddhism and quantum physics talks about that interconnectedness, that we're all dependent on each other. So I need the farmer to make the bean, do the bean, pick the bean, the journey the bean takes all the way to my cup. And then when I taste it, I'm like, smell it. I was like, wow, that's beautiful. And at the same time, a bird lands on a tree. Wow, why would I want any more in life?
Yeah. This is the start of season 3, by the way, for Graft, and I've promised myself I won't cry. I'm so shit at this; it's unbelievable. But no, it's beautiful, and in that, again, just kind of takes us back to that element of now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Another friend that I worked with, she, an awesome lady, but I was kind of sounding off about, you know, the trivia stuff of work that doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
But feels very real, of course, to everybody. And she said, make yourself a cup of tea in a glass cup if you can, and watch the tea bag.
Yeah.
I've done that so many
beautiful.
times since, right? Because and when you mentioned about a bird, the first time I spoke to the performance coach that I'm speaking with at the moment, he told me, look out the window, what do you notice now? Live in the moment for now, and it was exactly that. 2 birds landing on and I just thought, he said, don't try and be anything that you see, just, you know, because nature isn't it, it's the now, and that moment of clarity and experiencing it. We talked downstairs, we love coffee, right?
Yeah.
But how often I've made coffee as fast as I can to get the coffee, drink the coffee fast
to get out.
But the experience of it all is there's beauty in it all, without question.
Every little bit of it.
That listening aspect for people going through it, David, and perhaps a very obvious question, but can you remember being scared when you were getting any of this
Yeah.
kind of diagnosis and
Yeah.
what does it feel like today?
Yeah, I'm always scared. I always have it because it's an emotion. And again, it's when you get trapped with the inner voice rather than the awareness. So if the inner voice starts to take over, then that leads down this whole path of inner voice, thought, feeling, emotion, behavior attached to personality. This is who I am. And that loop just continually goes. And then you have within the thought, you have this fear of I'm going to die. That creates the emotion of sadness and more fear. And then that becomes out in a behavior. You might become anxious, or you might become snappy or irritable with the people around you. So that does sometimes happen. Usually in my sleep, I'll wake up at maybe 3 a.m. and think, wow, is this the last year I'm going to live? And then where I've done more of the work, I realize, well, if I just become aware and realize that the voice in my head is just, it's commentary, not the commander. It's a weather report, not the weather. So I can listen to it, acknowledge it, and realize, okay, right, I'm not strong. I'm just trying to survive and do the best I can. What is that? When that thought comes in and it does trigger fear, if I replace that with just an awareness, and I think this is the alchemy of consciousness, right? And you can turn lead to gold almost, because you can watch those thoughts. And if you're just aware of those thoughts, you can almost replace it with compassion, kindness, curiosity, just to say, well, this is a thought that's coming up. I am not the thought. I am not fear. I'm not dying right now. I'm very much alive right now. This organism is very much functioning right now. So I can sit and just watch the thought, knowing that that thought will disappear, and I can translate that into more of a neutral state of just compassion and kindness to myself. And being like, okay, I'm going to have those thoughts. And they're hard when you're sitting in oncology, and right now I'm on a drug, and if the drug works, I get to live longer. If the drug doesn't work, then I might not get to live longer. But I shouldn't, or I could not let that control the moment I'm in, and actually and take ownership of that, and just watch, just become that observant. And I think that the greatest book I've read around that was Pablo Coelho, The Alchemist, because he is telling you that everything you're looking for is actually within you. But you have to go on the journey to find it, discover it, learn, meet the omens, the demons, meet everybody, have these conversations.
The Sherpas and everybody.
Yeah, everyone. And he's having the similar conversation to what Carl Jung had in the Red Book, but it's not as aggressive.
Yeah.
You can read it and it's this beautiful story that actually everything you're looking for is within you. But you have to become aware. And if you're not aware, you're being run by the subconscious, which, yes, then you'll be governed by fear, by frustration, by anger. And you can see people go, why is this happening to me? And they'll lose it. And they'll maybe go back to their 7-year-old child or whatever that behavior pattern was then. And they're not really functioning. And I just thought, well, I'm going to die. I know that. But how do I want to live? And at the moment, the only thing I can control, it's letting go of the control. Trying to control everything is a recipe for disaster, because I can't control what my tumor is going to do. I can sleep well, I can move, I can eat well, I can do all the things that I know how to do to give me the best quality of life. So I can do all of them, not obsess about them, but I can do them and then just sit with that awareness. But to say that I don't get scared would be inauthentic. Authenticity is important to me. Of course I get scared, and that inner chatter in the mind, that inner voice is always there. It's always playing. There's this, like, I guess, this pull between the ego and your sense of self. And I think when I came out of brain surgery, I did quite a bit of work with Professor Steve Peters, and he's a close friend, and he actually said to me, he says, wow, listening to you speak post-brain surgery, it sounds like you found your sense of self. And I would say for the first time in 16 years of dealing with cancer, my brain moved 15 millimeters from before surgery because the tumor was pressing it so hard, and I was hours away from dying. And I think that was a real awakening of, wow, I've probably arrived where Pablo Coelho would want me to be post-brain surgery. So that's where I felt like I had got to that point of just being.
There's two bits that I want to mention to you before we come to a close, but something that the profound effect that you've had on me, but a couple of quotes that you've mentioned on different podcasts that you've been on, but that cancer was your best teacher. A philosophy that you're living by is about 18,000 seconds, which I think is beautiful. Lost half of my body, but found my purpose. When you reflect on those, and I guess one of the things I wanted to ask you, David, is your fondest memories of the highs of the Olympics, the gold medals, and the and to the what you touched on, that there were things that you could have gone on to do, and high life celebrity and that side of things. But what are your philosophies and things that you live by today, and your happiest memories that have got you there?
Yeah. So my first one is be where your feet are. I'm currently just finishing writing a book, and that's going to be the title of it, Be Where Your Feet Are. And that's just about living in the present moment. But it's also very hard to be where your feet are, because it can be quite exhausting. So how do you live with that philosophy of be where your feet are? And it is literally just being in the moment, being engaged with people. If you're with people, don't be on your phone, because that's, there's nothing worse if you're sitting talking to somebody and their watch is buzzing, their phone's buzzing, because then I'm thinking, well, you're not really with me at the moment. You're kind of somewhere else. So there must be something more important than our time together at the moment. So I think that's something that I think for me is my biggest achievement in life. Is not a medal. Is none of that stuff. It's learning to just be a human being, and be in that wherever I am. Just be there. If I'm in the park, that's where I am at that moment. Just to be in the moment and absorb it. Even if I'm in oncology, be there in that moment. Learn from it, experience it, live it, and those human connections. That's what I love. I love those human connections. Those little moments where you smile at someone in the coffee shop in the morning and say, "Hey, good morning. I wish you a blessed year." I have a rule when I get in an Uber that I never take a phone out. I want to have a conversation with the driver, to learn who are they, who's this other human being on this planet, and to realize that we are all interconnected. And I like, even when I got out my Uber today to walk here, somebody looked at me and I could tell they were judging, because that's a human trait, is to judge. And I just knew the way they looked, because they see me getting out and paralyzed, and I'm falling all over the place. My trousers were falling down. There was all these things playing out in this real time, and we're not really in reality. We're only a perception of reality as it's happening, but it's so hard to comprehend what reality is, that we can experience the same event and live it completely differently from the exactly same thing. We can see the same thing, but two different people will perceive it differently based on their thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And it's just trying to say, yeah, okay, Viktor Frankl spoke about the stimulus, the space, and the response, just for people to try and have that space and not to judge. And then if you are starting to judge, question yourself and hold yourself accountable. Why am I judging? I know nothing about this person. And I've had people look at me in certain ways and say, well, yeah, the reason I'm wearing a tracksuit is because I don't have any feeling in my body. I have 2 huge brain tumors and spine tumors. I'm paralyzed. It's really uncomfortable for me to wear certain clothes. And then they're like, oh, I didn't realize that. And I said, yeah, because you automatically went to judging, because we're pre-programmed to, well, if you're at this event, you must be wearing black. You have to wear black shoes. Well, I can't wear black shoes because I'll fall over because I can't walk. So it's just it's having that compassion. So I think for me, my best success or greatest takeaway from life so far is to live in the moment, but to live with kindness, compassion, and that sort of curiosity, and ultimately just to try and make the world a better place.
David Smith, thanks so much for coming onto the podcast. Yeah, you're the first person that I reached out for. You're my epitome of graft.
Thank you.
When's the book out?
It'll be this year.
Amazing.
It'll be this year. Me and Steve are just kind of finishing the edits now to bring it together. And it was a book that I started writing 16 years ago. So it's taken me 16 years to write it, through all of the diagnoses, all of the surgeries. I'm on surgery 9 now. Most of the people I've been on this journey with are now dead, that I've been through radiotherapy with, and that they're no longer alive. So I share their stories, and it's about, if someone reads it, I don't want them to read it thinking of David Smith. I want them to read it and think of themselves and take them into that situation, and what would I do? How would I manage this? What would it look like if this was happening to me, with the ethos that I hope that then gives them the little gentle push to live a more fulfilling life and be less caught up in the noise and more embraced with nature and the being.
Are you enjoying it? Enjoying writing it?
I loved it. It was very cathartic to write it. And also I think that my purpose now is just to try and help people see the gift that it is to have your health. Because when you have your health, it's such an easy thing to take for granted. And I sit and watch people move and walk every day. I would give anything just to be able to get out of bed one morning and go for a walk. I would literally give everything I have away. And I know that probably will never happen in my lifetime. So I try to think, well, okay, I can hopefully pass on that to someone else, that don't just walk down the road unconsciously looking at your device. If you walk through the park, walk through the park. If you're walking down through the street, smile at people, say hello. You don't have to say hello to everyone in London. That would be pretty full on, but just be more human being. So I enjoyed writing it, and I just hope it helps a lot of people. I want to put all of it to charity, so that the ethos of the book is that every book that's bought, 100% of profits, because we're self-publishing it, 100% of profits goes to charity. And it can help shape the future of cancer and people who need the research and the help. And also at the same time, it maybe is a shared story of, like, you're not alone. If you're sitting in oncology, it's very easy to feel alone and feel like you're the only one this is happening to. But it's to say, look, you're not alone. There's lots of people going through this. And actually, we're all, if you live long enough, you're not coming out of this scar-free. We're all going to get scars. We're all going to get trauma. And sometimes, with social media, it's easy to look and think that everyone's life looks perfect and I'm the only one struggling. But actually, everybody's managing and dealing with something. And some of it is very catastrophic end of life. And in other things, they have a broken nail, but it's quite traumatic at the time.
Feel the same.
Yeah.
Dave, thanks so much for coming on to the
Ben.
Graft podcast. If there's one tiny takeaway for what it's worth, you also said getting out of bed in the morning and putting my 2 feet on the ground and be really grateful and feeling it. I do that every day now, with real immediacy of thought about that, and living in that very moment. So thank you for taking the time. Sorry that I've hounded you so much.
No, thank you.
It.
I've been very humbled to come on and have the conversation. So I hope people can take something from it.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. And we can't wait for the book. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That's a wrap on this week's Graft. Please make sure you follow the podcast from wherever you listen or watch from so you don't miss an episode. And we'll see you next week.